All right, welcome. This is Genesee County Compassion Club Show.
It has started. It's begun.
It's begun, our fledgling episode.
If you did not know,
word of the day is fledgling.
any bird that has just acquired its flight feathers.
But has not yet flown.
That's a fledgling.
Its first feathers are its fledge. Its first feather fled.
So after it flies, is it fledged?
I guess it has fledged.
Well, I guess it's fledged if it's poised to fly, and if once it flies, it flew.
It is fled. Maybe that's where fled the nest comes from.
Oh, okay. Sure.
Maybe that's where the whole
And they meant
word
to say
fled
fledged.
comes from. Yeah. Interesting. We're learning already. Is your brain hurt yet?
Bringing education to you in ways you never thought possible.
You're killing my buzz, man.
A what? A fledgling? What are you doing on the Genesee County Compassion Club show? I'll talk about fledglings.
Call in. We'll get you the definition.
Numbers
If
810.
you have any questions about fledglings,
We can take care of your questions. Yeah, call in if you'd like. It's 208-1854. I always want to hear from you guys. We got the medical marijuana going on here in the state of Michigan. We've got some bills coming up here in the house.
In the hizzy.
In his house. Looks like they're going to be having a Senate hearing tomorrow. We'll be talking about that today on the show. In the studios, we have Eric Gunnels, councilman of Thetford Township. Glad to have you in the studios.
thank you.
And Tobe Step Rendezzo.
Not as important.
He has unelected importance. All right, but it's good to be here with you guys, and glad to be here in the city of Flint. It's a beautiful day out there. If you're a turtle or a duck,
Yeah.
If you're a turtle, you're hibernating right now, I think.
that's what I'm saying.
You don't even know what's happening.
You don't even know what's happening. You're at the bottom of a pond, just nuzzled in some
Two
mud.
things it's good to be right now: turtles and ducks. But yeah, we've got some interesting news we want to talk with you today. Feel free to call in if you have questions or if you'd like to comment about the House bills. I keep wanting to call it the Senate bills, but it's the House bills. Yeah, I got that going on. And then, of course, we got updates for you on what's happening at the Genesee County Compassion Club. I know that last Friday, wasn't it beanbag tournament?
Yeah, it was a cornhole. The bags are filled with corn, apparently. So
Give us a
you
second
know
to
the
explain.
hole. It's pretty
Right on.
self-explanatory.
There you go.
Cornhole.
It's a sack
It's a
toss.
fun word to say. Yeah, it's a sack toss.
It's a sack toss.
Toss your sack in the cornhole.
Oh.
Yeah, apparently it was a blast, man. Everybody that played got sweaty, and they were into it.
Sounds like a good time.
This is an intense competition, I'm sure.
Everybody that played said they wanted to do it again. So if you didn't check it out last week, next time we have it, it'll be written on the board. You'll see. Come on down, check it out.
Awesome.
Throw some
And
stack.
do we have anything for this Friday? Any special themes going on?
I really don't know because I haven't worked this week.
You lazy animal.
I'm sure
What
there's
is
a
wrong
theme.
with you?
Yeah, probably. Let's see. The first one. Yeah, I think it's euchre.
Yucca.
Yeah, I believe the first
Friday of the month.
Friday of every month is euchre.
Awesome.
There we go.
Tournament, whatever. Yeah. So you should probably get down and sign up for the euchre tournament or whatever else is happening if I'm completely wrong.
That's where you played at 21 or something like that?
I'm always a security, don't know.
His worthless wealth of information.
That's what we have him on the show.
I just come down to eat chocolate. I don't know.
I'm sure you guys know how to play euchre. I think it was invented in Michigan or something like that. Like, this is the home of euchre.
Home of euchre?
I
Yeah.
believe so. Like, you go down south, they're like, euchre? What is that?
Yeah.
Some kind of drink?
Yeah.
You guys pour yourselves a euchre? I'm pretty sure. They're like, spade. Oh, spades. Yeah, we know spades.
Right.
I like euchre when I get thirsty.
But yeah, come on down, 6 to 9 on Friday. Love to have you guys. Always fun times. And let's see, what else do we have going on? I know we had the soup kitchen a couple weeks ago.
Mm-hmm.
That was awesome. Did some hand tossing pizzas. More of that hand tossing. We're just full of tossing things right now.
Nice. That's the theme. Use your hands, toss some.
There you go.
If you have the remote too long, toss it to the guy sitting next to you or whatever.
Yeah, share.
Right. Sharing is caring. Tossing. It's flossing.
He's reaching out for that one. Oh, yeah. I know we got the soup kitchen coming up again at the end of this month. It's last Saturday of the month. I want to say, let me check the calendar here. I want to say that it's not the last Saturday of this month. I think it is.
Tis the season. I'm sure people are
I think
anxiously awaiting that one.
I think it's the 21st. I want to say.
All right.
All right. We'll get more info on that later. Anyways, moving on. Oh yeah, I want to mention we had the food donations in November. A smashing success.
Yes.
Smashing
What was
success.
the number? Like I said, I didn't work Tuesday, so I don't know.
We had I don't know. Nobody weighed the food. Our scales didn't go up that high. Our scales only cover a couple ounces.
They only go to 15 ounces.
But I know that we had two large 4x8, two tables completely covered with food, and people were still bringing it in after the end of the month. I know our man Greg Joslin down at the club taking it over to the food bank there, but
Yeah.
there had to be 500-600 pounds of food there.
Yeah, there was quite a bit. There
Lots
was
of
people-
food.
Wow.
Not
And-
everybody could give, but other people were making up for that by bringing in pallets of stuff.
Yeah, well, and we had people making up for it by bringing in dollars,
Sure.
Oh yeah.
and the
Wasn't
dollars added up. We had
Yeah.
$1,500,
Nice.
just over $1,500 donated. So we'll be hooking up the soup kitchen with that money, and that's awesome. I mean,
Yeah, that's a big deal.
they buy $6 for every, or 6 meals for every $1, something like that,
Mm-hmm.
and
That's
so that's a lot of meals. You guys provided that.
9,000 meals.
He's
Beep, boop.
good with math.
Man. Good for something.
So yeah, thank you very much. $1,500 and about 500 pounds of food. That's spectacular. So that all goes to the North End Soup Kitchen. We'd love to help out down there, and I know that's going to help them out a ton. So
Oh, yeah.
actually, quarter of a ton.
Right.
Well, maybe if they spend the money on food, it'll be a couple tons.
Yeah.
So that's good stuff. We really appreciate you guys helping. We always love being a part of the community in that fashion. So thank you for letting us do that. Other things got going on at the club. I think that's about it for now. I know everybody's getting ready for Christmas.
Right, yeah.
Everyone survived Black Friday. All
Nobody
through
I know
that
got
now.
stabbed.
I think they need to change the name of Black Friday. It sounds racist.
It does.
Well, they're
I
starting
think-
at...
And it sounds dark. It just sounds real like it's Black Friday.
Yeah.
It's like we're like doomed. Like
Yeah,
you know what I
like,
mean?
you're gonna
Like,
go out
like-
and worship Satan through.
yeah, you know, like look-
Commercialism.
What are we all just
Hide
like
in
getting
the
in our
process
black
rack.
witchcraft and
You guys are still
mode,
dressed
or-
for it.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, Black Friday.
We need to name it something softer, like Happy Friday.
Right.
Happy
You know what I mean?
Friday.
I'm
or-
sure that's-
Supper Day.
That's too obvious.
Oh,
that's too obvious.
Right, subliminal.
We're not even doing it on Friday anymore. Everybody's starting at like 6 o'clock. Thanksgiving Day.
Yeah.
Why
you're
don't
right.
they just call? I mean, most of those Friday sales last the whole weekend anyway. Why don't they just call?
No
it
way.
Thanks.
No way.
Are you
One
saying
day
it's
only. One day.
Let's see you get a 40-inch big screen for $2 on Saturday.
Going until Sunday.
Just so happens it coincides with all the new stuff coming in next year, so they gotta get rid of all that old crap.
Oh, sure, for sure.
When did they
True.
start
David, that's
this?
sweet. Gotta get sell.
I mean,
move.
I don't remember this in the past 5 years. I remember this, being a big day, but I don't remember it before that. I mean, 15, 20 years ago, I can't remember this being such a huge day for buying.
I totally agree, John.
I don't think it started till the internet, to be honest. I think when the internet hit, like everybody, like that first year, I remember everybody freaking out because like 35% went to internet sales. So
Well,
places started freaking out, and I think they started having big sales.
You're
Well,
right.
what happened to
That's
Cyber
a good
Monday?
point, actually.
Cyber
Ooh,
Monday.
Cyber
Well,
Monday
that's
happened.
been started since the internet.
What happened to Cyber Monday? I didn't
They
hear
don't
a lot
talk about that on
that.
TV anymore.
Oh, censorship.
Censorship. Yeah.
Corporate
Okay,
censorship.
yeah. Can't
They
talk
people
about.
stabbing their wives to get to the computer first on Cyber Monday.
Yeah.
I'm blocked. It's down. Server's down. No, I think you're right. It has become a big thing in like the last
5, 6 years.
Yeah.
5, 6 years,
You know,
10 years.
I would have to say that I think probably sociologically over the course of like 100 years where we've been, promoting the idea of Christmas, and Christmas has kind of been becoming a sales marketing thing over the last 40 or 50 years. And then I think, probably when you have like, military families who come home for the holidays, on, November 24th is when they come home. And then you have, so you have a lot of family get together and so forth around that time of year. Generally speaking, they probably go out and go shopping, prelude to Christmas, kind of thing. So it probably sort of morphed into the whole, hey, let's get everybody to get the idea that we're going to offer some really good sales on the Friday after Thanksgiving.
Right.
I've never been a big fan of it. I
Me
just
either.
hate it.
I do too.
Ugh.
When I hear Black Friday, I just crawl in a hole and I go, let me know when it's
Really?
over.
I used to go, we used to load up. We'd go to Value City. Like,
Really?
Yeah, we'd tailgate, watch the fights. It was awesome.
You know what, I did hear about that. In fact, I actually got invited to go out on Black Friday and just go people watching.
Yep.
Yeah.
I was like, they like a group of my friends wanted to go people watching. I'm like,
Half the people out are just watching the other people.
oh really? Yeah. I mean, because they say, oh, you just never believe what you see out there. I mean, people fighting over stuff. I mean,
It's
the things that
amazing.
And people you wouldn't expect to see fighting.
Exactly. Yeah,
You'll
that's
see
what's.
people like stash things. They'll get a TV and they'll stash.
Oh,
it everywhere.
yeah,
You'll
I've
see
seen
some
that.
old lady come and get it, and then they're all mad. You know?
I've seen that. I've seen that actually, where people will stash stuff,
Uh-huh.
you know, on the weekend or the Black Friday or the day before. They'll stash stuff in the back.
I'm
of the
just going to
shelf.
hide this big screen behind the pizzas in the freezer
I'm
food
gonna hide
section.
this little toy back here, so it'll be there when I get here on Friday.
Yeah.
You know, cheap the price. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You know?
So you go in on like Tuesday or Wednesday.
Right, you hide the
Right.
item somewhere else in the store.
You hide the Furby in the bread department.
Right. So when it goes on sale, you're like, I know where one's at, in case they're all gone.
Yeah.
It's a good idea.
I've seen
I always
people
thought,
do
you
that.
know, that I hate it. I just can't stand it. And then I always thought, well, my family, you know, they're better than that. I'm not going to do that sort of
Yeah.
thing. And then I'm over at Thanksgiving, you know, and we're all wrapping things up. And, you know, my dad and I, we got our turkey groove on. And they're just like, you know, not ready to do anything. You know, and, you know, my sisters and my mom are all like, okay, well, we got to get going. I'm like, what?
For what?
Where are you going? Well, we're going shopping. I'm like,
Yeah.
really?
Yeah, that's
I'll
what
just stay here.
Thanksgiving's not about just laying around your tryptophan buzz anymore. Yeah, you got to go shopping.
That's
Bum.
Yeah, that's why I started looking for chores to do around the
Family
house.
reason.
I'll stay here. I'll build a fire. I'll cut some wood. No problem. You guys go out, go shopping, have a good time. Let me know when you get back.
Sure, you're going to have some peace and quiet.
Yeah. It's just,
Didn't think about that.
yeah, a couple years ago, I was like, everybody wanted to go shopping on Black Friday. I'm like, yeah, I'm gonna go cut firewood. You guys have a good time. Seriously, I'd rather run a chainsaw
Like,
than go just go on Black Friday. Seriously.
Unless they get trampled. Yeah, we went, me and Stephanie went to Target one time. We were like third in line, all the way at the front. Like 100 people behind us, mad as hell, you know. And when they open the doors, and they come out and they tell you, like, if you're looking for TVs, go in, go to the right. You know, they kind of coordinate it so people aren't, like, stepping over each other, freaking out. But it's just amazing.
They don't
So
want
they
anyone
open the
going down
doors.
in a stampede.
Yeah, it was such a flood. Stephanie was getting knocked over, and she grabbed the alarm system thing right there and just took it down. There was so many people on her, just ripped it all the way down the floor, took out the alarm system and the whole place.
Wow.
It was like mayhem.
Wow.
Security guards had to check everybody leaving. Flights, yeah, it was amazing.
Oh man.
That's intense.
Yeah, so if you got the balls,
You hear where one lady was
Go
using a
get it.
taser gun on other shoppers in one of the malls around the country? She was actually using her taser.
Wow.
Yeah, I mean, this is insane. I mean,
yeah, tasing people out of the way.
Just about to reach out for that Cabbage Patch Kid.
that's another thing.
Down you go.
I need to save $2.75. You're getting zapped.
I've been at stores and people come up and ask for those damn Cabbage Patch Kids. You know, I was around for the first time they were a rage, you know, in the late 70s, early 80s, and I'm like, God, this is. I guess
Yeah.
you live long enough, you see everything come back around, but. You know.
Well, I guess they were the original Christmas, whatever you want to call it, Christmas fury of shopping, like
Oh, yeah, I
item that
remember.
there was. You know, like that was the original first one that was like so hot off the shelf you could resell it for twice as much as it retailed for. You know
What was
I
that?
mean?
Okay.
The Cabbage Patch Kids.
Really?
Yep.
Well, the
they
year
were
I'm talking about that we
Wow.
went, it was the Furby. That was the year
Oh,
of the
right
Furby.
on.
Yes, everybody.
The year of the
every
Furby.
mom wanted
That's
a
what
Furby.
we go by. We had year of the Elmo.
You're the
Either people are buried in cemeteries because marking those epics of human history there.
Yeah,
You're the Furby. They actually
You're the
crossed
time you're the border.
Yeah, Grandma went down to the Furby and
You're the Elmo.
year of the Elmo. Yep, you had
Yeah.
year of the
Took me
Xbox.
out. That was
Elmo,
huge.
yeah.
So we got like the year of the iPad too, year of the
There
smartphone.
probably is something like that year of the smartphone. I think that was big last year.
Yeah,
I don't know.
speaking of smartphone, I was watching the History Channel the other day. I love the History Channel, and they had the top 100 gadgets of all time. I thought that was pretty cool.
Okay.
Chainsaw was one of them. Circular saw was one of them. Radio was number 2. Smartphone number 1. because it could do so many things that were on the top 100.
Like chainsawing.
Chainsaw, wait, no. Light bulb, you know.
Got a chainsaw app yet?
They probably have laser some days.
Yeah.
Oh, right. Yeah.
Cheese slicer app.
GPS was on there. Oh, man, so many things. It was cool.
Yeah, that is amazing. I mean, they are amazing things. Saturday Night Live had a skit with like Americans. It was like a talk show, and the Americans were like complaining about all the problems. You know, it's too slow, and then it's got the Japanese workers like, you know, what I mean, oh, it's too slow for you.
Right.
You have to climb up a mountain for 4 days to get to work to make those for you. Right. Oh, you can't get to Google in less than 3 seconds. Oh. Yeah, we start taking stuff for granted so fast.
Oh, yeah. Oh, man.
When I
Have you ever grabbed somebody's phone that's like less than yours?
Oh, yeah.
Oh my god.
It's all you can do not to insult the other person. It's like,
It's gotta pop out. Keyboard.
I love that, man.
It's
That's
awesome.
like when I was
yeah.
first starting computers, I always saw people were saying, oh, my computer's slow today. I'm like, how slow can it be? It's a computer. No, I'm chomping at the bit if it's not coming up and instantaneously, you know?
Yeah, so
And
you
that's-
just
I
get
don't-
used to it.
I'm
Oh,
so
man.
used to it, yeah.
Expect it.
Yeah.
I think they need to bring back like retro phones, like the old style with the flip down, the pull out antenna.
Oh, yeah.
And then they just update it with some modern stuff on there.
Sure.
It'd just be like, oh, I got the classic edition.
Right.
It's a Motorola.
Somebody should put it out, yeah.
Refurbished.
Well, like, look at showing that
Ear
watch.
warmer.
I told you that watch. I showed somebody a pocket watch, and she picked it up from my hand, and she looked at it and said, well, what's this thing for? And, talk about the stem to wind it. I went, that's how you wind it up. She goes, you wind it up? She's in her 30s, and she never seen a wind-up watch
Wow.
in her life.
Hmm.
And I thought
That's
that was
amazing.
brilliant. I felt very old at that point.
What else does it do? No, it just tells time.
Right. It tells you what time it is. But you have to wind it and keep it on track.
Yeah. That was just just a generation gap,
Well, and you do have, some younger people now that have trouble telling time with, hands.
Oh, yeah.
What
Yeah.
does this mean?
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Oh yeah, that's
It's-
gone.
it's-
Cursive's gone. Yeah, there's a bunch
Yeah,
of
I mean,
things.
I cannot even, like, I know exactly what you're saying. I've actually known some younger generation people that have no idea how to tell time on a regular clock. There's no clue. I mean, and it's something that's just sort of overlooked in the curriculum of education. They don't even teach it anymore because it's like digital everywhere.
Yeah, the ampersand has turned into the @ symbol. Like nobody even knows its original name, like what it is. Or
Oh yeah, that and the
Ask people to know what
hashtag.
the @
Yeah, like isn't that the old number symbol?
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I didn't even.
Hashtag. Like new generation, they're lost.
I didn't even know. I didn't even know that till this last week.
That it was a number symbol?
No, it was a hashtag.
Oh, that was hashtag.
that's a number sign we talk about. What's a hashtag? What are you talking about? Yeah, it's just
Yeah,
no
start asking
idea.
people what the original name for the @ symbol is.
I think that's going to be one of those things that, like, in 5 years, it's going to be where are they now? Hashtag's going to be on that episode.
Yeah.
What happened to hashtag?
You guys remember hashtag?
Remember when you had to, like, categorize your posts so people could find it?
That's funny.
Yeah, I think that's what it's all about. All right, let's talk about some marijuana stuff. We've got some houses, our house here in the state of Michigan, discussing the bills tomorrow. There's a House hearing at the Judiciary Committee, and I know there's a number of people planning on attending tomorrow down in Lansing at the Capitol. And Eric, you're going to be there
I'm gonna be there
live in person.
live in person.
They're going to be discussing House Bill 4271, which is the Provisioning Center Act, for lack of a better name.
Mhm.
And I think they're also going to be. Will they be discussing 5702 or whatever it is?
The concentrates.
Concentrates, yes.
I do not think so.
Okay, so
I have not heard any word about that, and I have not heard any word about the decriminalization bill either.
okay, so it looks like they're going to be
no word on those two.
just
bills.
talking about the Provisioning Center Act.
Yep.
And then also the Senate Bill 660, is that
660,
right?
yeah.
The Prairie Plant Systems Bill.
Yes.
So now that one already passed in the Senate. So it's gone through, and now the House gets to discuss it. And then the House has its own bill, the Provisioning Centers Act.
Mhm.
They'll look at passing this or not passing it, and then that will go to the Senate.
Correct.
Okay. So this is the bill, we've talked about it on the show before, about the Provisioning Centers Act. Whether you like it or not, we'd like to hear from you. But this definitely gives what they're saying is it gives local municipalities the ability to regulate these. It gives them the ability to exist, provisioning centers that is. And, I guess I'd like to hear more from people out there as far as what they think about this bill. I get a lot of mixed reviews on it, and I think that's because there's a lot of confusion in the bill. Like, for example, provisioning center agent. And I'm just reading to you from the bill. It says here, it means a principal officer, board member, employee, or operator, or any other individual acting as an agent of the provisioning center. That's the definition for a provisioning center agent. Now, like, I teach my kids, we homeschool, and one of the things we do is vocabulary, and I try to teach them that when we're defining a word, you can't use that word in the definition.
Right.
So let me read this to you again. Provisioning center agent means a principal officer, board member, employee, operator, or any other individual acting as an agent of the provisioning center. So I guess when I say that people are confused about this bill, I could see why.
Yeah.
Because they're right.
So a provisioning center agent, someone who's going to work at these places, this is just one issue on the bill I'm picking out here, could be basically anybody,
Yeah.
is what they're
Whoever's
saying.
in the building.
Who's ever, exactly.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, they could be an officer, a board member, an employee, an operator, or any other individual acting as an agent of the provisioning center. So yeah, Toby, you're right. I
As
mean,
long as they're human.
they walk in,
And they're acting.
yeah, like say Toby's working there. He's an employee. He goes on break, and I'm like, hey, you want me to cover for you? I just walked in off the street.
Right.
He's like, yeah,
You're gonna act like Toby.
you dubbed me. You don't even have to dub me. You're just like, yeah, you're an agent.
Let's go
He's
for it.
gonna knight
You
you.
just have to act like an agent.
Weigh that up, man.
Yeah, interesting here. What this bill does, what kind of provisions does it actually provide? I'm kind of confused. I'm assuming that this bill here is going to have to be built on top of the current medical marijuana law, meaning that in order for you to operate in coherence with the state's law, you're going to have to first abide by the Michigan medical marijuana law, and then you'd be able to abide by this law.
Right.
That's the understanding here. We had our representative Irwin on from the Ypsilanti area back a few months ago, and that was his explanation as well. You had to be in compliance with the medical marijuana law here in Michigan, and then in order to even be in compliance with this law here.
Right.
So I guess the question is so now someone can be an agent of this, but they're automatically going to have to be a licensed medical marijuana person in the first place. So i.e. they either have to be a patient or a caregiver. This law doesn't say that, but I guess if we're going by assumptions,
Well, that should be in what you just read.
you would think.
You would think, right?
I think it.
Qualifying you as an agent.
So
What if they're just? But it says they can act as an agent.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
yeah,
I have a card. You believe me?
right,
I lost a finger. Nope. Acting.
right.
Yeah, interesting there. Like I said, it's just bringing up one point of the law, one section of it here. It definitely raises some questions. Like, for example, they have on here purchasing or receiving marijuana, including seedlings, blah, blah, blah. Section C, purchasing or receiving marijuana from a patient or caregiver. From a registered patient or caregiver is not prohibited where the provisioning center is located if the amount does not exceed the qualifying patient's medical marijuana possession limits.
Right.
So,
That's one I had a question on too. For example, that being like the question I raise about that this one here is, does that mean that even if you're not working for a provisioning center or have nothing to do with a provisioning center, if you're just a medical marijuana caregiver, or what I'm saying, does this mean that a municipality can block you even from transferring to your normal patient? Does that see what I'm saying?
yeah.
Like
Outside of the facility.
outside of the provisioning act. Even if you have nothing, you say, well, because the officer says, because let's just say that a municipality says no provisioning centers here, no conduct of provisioning centers allowed in our township, and then you get pulled over by a township police officer, and the township police officer says, well, we have no transferring, blah, 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 and you say, no, I'm going to my registered qualified patient, but is he going to read that and say, well, you can't do that under our ordinance?
Yeah, good point.
You see what I'm saying? I mean, I would hate for that to be interpreted that way, and then we have to drive across Michigan like a jigsaw puzzle.
Yeah, you got a caravan to the next area.
Right, so that we've got we can't go through Vienna Township. We got to drive around. We got to go through. We got to cross over Montrose Township to go down into Flushing before we can get back over to Genesee. Does that make any sense? You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like that wouldn't make any sense at all. And I don't know how that can, if simply that the law was intended to be separate from the Medical Marijuana Act and have separate definitions of the Medical Marijuana Act. If that is true, then does this statement here mean that that the municipality can also block or prevent a regular medical marijuana transfer
Good
between
question.
a caregiver and a regular patient?
Well, I guess the question I have on this, in addition to that, is first line, purchasing medical marijuana. We've already been told that sales are illegal.
Right.
So that kind of insinuates to me that a sale is going on if there's a purchase going on.
Of course. That the word purchase, obviously.
Changing that, or
Sure.
what's going on there?
Yeah, and then of course, does that mean that a municipality can say no purchasing and no? You see what I'm saying? So it makes you wonder if this can occur, if this can backlash in a way that maybe a restrictive township could go, well, we're going to be really restrictive.
Well, I think
And
you're
we're
right.
gonna interpret
If
it,
you go on to the
that way.
next section here, it says Section H, transporting or delivering medical marijuana or paraphernalia to the residence of a patient or caregiver if transportation and delivery are not prohibited by the municipality in which transportation and delivery occur. So, I mean, this doesn't say anything about a provisioning center. This just says transporting.
Right.
So good question there.
So I mean, now are we going to be confusing the police officer worse when he gets to the and then of course you argue, well, I have the state right to do this. I have a state license, and we're in the state of Michigan, and he says, well, yeah, I'm even if it's a state trooper, and the state trooper says, yeah, but you're in Oakland County or you're in such and such township, therefore their laws, blah blah blah.
Sounds like it to me.
You see what I'm saying? It does raise a lot of questions and concerns. I hope that that's not the case.
Well, it does say, Section 2, a municipality may enact an ordinance to impose and enforce additional local requirements on provisioning centers or safety compliance facilities.
Right.
They're giving the towns the right to even have these.
Right. So the
facilities.
right. The townships ultimately are going to have, your local municipalities are ultimately going to have the authority to say yay or nay to whatever it is that you're doing. In relationship to medical marijuana, in a way. I mean,
I hope you're in a good county.
Right, or a good township.
Yeah.
You could be in a pro county, and you could be in a very negative township that is very anti medical marijuana or marijuana for that matter.
Mm-hmm. Well, and there certainly are those areas all across Michigan.
Of
so
course,
it seems
sure.
like that they're giving them the. Now, I guess it seems to me like these municipalities that they're giving permission to, don't they already have permission?
You would think so, but they, and this is where I've
Or not permission, but the ability to regulate these.
You would think so. I would think so when I look at that.
I mean, we have multiple municipalities across the state that have already regulated these.
It's true.
Either allowing them or against both
Sure.
ways, but
well, the Wyoming case certainly, the city of Wyoming case tried to say that you couldn't do that. Or that the city could, but that went all the way to the Supreme Court, and that got it's going to go to the Supreme Court. Actually, it hasn't
yes,
yet.
it's headed there.
But the appellate court decision? I think it was that made the decision that the local municipality could not trump the state of Michigan's law.
Okay.
But like I said, that one's going to be heard again. I think before the Michigan State Supreme Court, probably sometime in 2014.
So we've yet to hear on that.
We've yet to hear on that.
Yeah.
So so it does raise a lot of issues. I have concerns with it. I think that the local option for a provisioning center does make sense in a way that if that if we've got some legislators that just say, look, my community just doesn't want these, and I don't want to support anything that my community doesn't want. If that's the case, I guess that's the case. I think it could be, I think everybody in their own community will have their own little local battle to fight if that's the case. It's too bad it has to be that way, or it would have to be that way. But maybe there's some pros and cons there. I think there are some actually pros and cons to that.
Are they trying to take away the caregiver, the grower thing, and everything has to be provided by these prairie?
Well, this is different.
Systems.
This is different. We're not on the prairie
Canadian
systems
thing.
Right. We're not. This is the provisioning center bill, not the prairie systems bill.
Gotcha.
So this particular one obviously would still use the caregiver model that we have to facilitate the need for the provisioning centers to acquire the medication and then retransfer it or resell it in whatever way. I think that would help promote the caregiver model. I think one thing I don't like is for our law enforcement and our elected officials of local communities to say that the Medical Marijuana Act of 2008 is not a business. I keep hearing that repeated over and over again. It's not a business. It's not a business. It's not a business. Well, yes, it is. We know it is, and we know that it should be accepted as that. But since there's no whistles and bells of legislation to tell us how to do that, everybody wants to take a standoff approach. And I can tell you how a local municipality addresses the issue because I've brought it up before at my township. And right away they say things like, well, the state hasn't given us direction yet, so we're not gonna try to regulate something that the state's not necessarily going to allow. And then of course, almost every township attorney will advise the boards that they are hired by to advise. They will advise the boards to either wait or put in a temporary moratorium or something to that effect till they hear a clarification from a higher authority. Mm-hmm. Basically.
Well, it looks to me like they're allowing a lot of leeway here for the municipalities to regulate these how they deem fit.
Yes.
Which it could be a good thing, could be a bad thing.
I think there's pros and cons to that.
I guess my question is, as a provisioning center, how much are they allowed to possess
at any one given time? Right, and we haven't even addressed that issue with our own medical marijuana law of the 2008. Obviously, if you have any grower could easily at any given time potentially be over their possible usable weights if it's considered usable. But we have discrepancies over what's usable and what's not. We also have a discrepancy or an unclarified distinction between what's to say what a plant produces. I mean, maybe if some guy's growing 12 plants, he may get lucky. He may have one plant that grows 4 ounces. He may have one that only grows a half ounce. But does that mean it's just automatically putting him over? No. I mean, that doesn't necessarily, because that's not necessarily usable material until the medicine is usable. It's got a curing process, a drying process. All those things have to be taken into consideration before it can be considered usable.
Well, I agree with that, but I guess if you figure that let's say there's a center out there somewhere in a its own standing brick and mortar.
Right.
Any material they have in there, since it's ultimately for sale or for transfer,
sure,
is probably going to be considered usable.
Yes, I would think so too.
So again, if it's all usable, how much can the center have?
Right, and that's not even addressed.
It's not in the bill anywhere that I can see.
Not anywhere.
I guess it would, to me, I would think it'd depend on how many people work at the center.
Sure.
Or how many agents you have of the center, but it doesn't say that agents are allowed to have any particular amount either.
Right.
So is this just
does it go back to the Medical Marijuana Act and it's only 2.5 ounces per card holder at that facility at that given time?
If they're a provision center, they have to have enough on hand to provide. Maybe it goes by the member count or something.
That would
how would they? You know what I mean?
Or
simply be able to have enough to.
Well, right.
They all come in at the same time.
Right. If he's saying to facilitate the need of the consumption that provisioning center is providing. So you're right.
Let's say, for
In
instance,
a little town where we have 8 people to go there, there's no reason for them to have 50 pounds on hand.
well, let's just say, let's even give them the benefit of the doubt. Let's say that you do have to have your caregivers or patients to make up agents, and that these people are now all employees or agents of the provisioning center. So, okay, the provisioning center is here. We've got, let's say, 5 people who work there together, so they can ultimately have, that would be up to 25 patients, plus themselves, so it'd be 30 people. So does that mean that building, that center, can now have, 30 times 2.5 ounces?
Right. Right.
I guess
Maybe
that's the
case.
question.
You're going to have enough employees to cover.
So so that'd be somewhere around.
That's a hard one.
Right.
Well, it
somewhere
seems
between-
like, okay, well then if the police were to come in, let's say conduct some sort of a raid a year later, and they walk in there and the building's licensed to so-and-so, how is he able to prove that, is that what it is? He's got to turn around and prove that he has
or that he's
this many agents to cover this amount of cannabis, or is it all just going to be charged onto
him as the only
right?
acting
So now
agent.
this person here is
Right.
way over their usable limit, he's
Sure.
sitting there with 30, whatever, 60 ounces, whatever it would be.
Right.
It doesn't seem to lay it out clearly enough to where at least I wouldn't feel comfortable with it myself.
I know what you're saying.
Like,
and-
okay, well, I've got 10 employees. That means I can have 200 ounces.
Right.
You know what I mean, or whatever it adds up to.
Sure.
What if one of your employees quits? Then
Right.
all of a sudden now you're over your limit or
Right.
something.
Sure. Or what if the cops are at that individual's home and he's at his limit there? You know what I mean? But then they come directly to the the provisioning center. In such a case as Barbagro's case, where they go from the facility to their home, or from the home to the facility.
Sure.
So now where the lines blurred there now? I mean, does the provisioning center have so many acting agents? Well, this acting agent was at his home at the time, therefore only these meds are covered under his license, but they're not covered under here, under the provisioning center. Vice versa. This is
Well,
back
and
and
also
forth.
with the definition we read earlier, it seems kind of loosely based, which is not something we haven't found that really enables the citizens. It just so anyways, couldn't you just add on another agent?
Right.
Right. Or how many agents do you have? Well, hold on, let's see how much we have. First.
Hold on, let me make a phone call. Oh, I got one more right here. We're good.
Yep. Did I say 6 agents? I meant 10.
Yeah.
10 agents.
Yeah, I mean, it does, and without already.
This was the secret agent.
Maybe the patients are going to have to register at a certain provisioning center or whatever.
Well, I think they would, because in this bill there's a section for the provisioning center to keep track of the people that they're providing to ensure that they're not receiving, and the limit here is 2.5 ounces, I believe, every 10 days. So the provisioning center could not provide more than 2.5 ounces to any one of its patients.
Right.
On that race.
Same
on that
thing as the
basis.
ABC liquor stores down south. You can't go from one to the other. You got to show your ID. You're in the system. They know what you got. Yeah.
Well, again, the question comes back to, if this is based on the current medical marijuana law, and let's say, for instance, the agent at the provisioning center is a caregiver dealing with their patient. Let's say they have a patient that uses more than 2.5 ounces every 10 days or 2 weeks.
Sure.
So now does that person have to, through the center, they're going to provide their 2.5 ounces, and then a week later, when the patient wants more, they have to go outside and meet them somewhere else besides the center, because the center can't provide it, but yet under law, the caregiver can still provide it.
Sure.
It just seems to not really provide any solution there
Well,
for either the patient or the caregiver. It's
Sure.
almost like an unnecessary restraint if the fact that you have to be a card holder in order to be an agent, and then that's not necessarily defined by this definition. So
right. Another thing that concerns me too is that, well, if they're going to consider marijuana, the dried leaves and flowers, there's a whole market for fresh cannabis leaves to be just consumed, either by eating them raw or juicing them. Otherwise, there's a whole new market for that. So, to what extent do we consider the useful or the usable material of that being a fresh green leaf? Or how does that consider it a part of your 2.5 ounces if you were to have that bagged up and you were to take it home with you? You know what I mean? Like, could you have your 2.5 ounces from the provisioning center, and plus a 5-ounce bag of fresh green leaves that you're gonna go home and juice? You see what I'm saying?
Seems like it wouldn't be considered usable, so wouldn't you add it up in the 2.5 usable ounces?
Right, that's what I'm saying.
Right.
And so, I'm just saying, at what point are they going to say, what if the provisioning center did start providing, several ounces, or even to that extent, pounds,
some type of fresh material, not dried.
Exactly.
The same
So
thing with juicing, though. Once you juice it, it would be processed, so then you're going to be over your weight. You're sitting
well, I mean, you could. I mean, but you see what I'm saying?
Right.
There's a lot of different scenarios that have not even been thought of or even addressed.
Well, that brings up a good point, because if you were using like a natural juice form, exceeding 2.5 ounces seems like it'd be pretty easy. I mean, you're talking like a shot glass.
Sure.
3 shot glasses is too much.
Oh, right. Right. Well, I mean, and what if you're adding?
We're based on dry weight here, not liquid weight. But again, an ounce is an ounce.
Right. But then again, what if you're adding other juices like apple juice to that, juice? Do you have to, So I guess
if you're adding juice to the juice.
Well, I mean, think about it. I mean, like, like labeling. I mean, like, if you have, where do we draw the line here? You know what I mean? It's like we've got, cannabinoid material compounds found in the usable medicine, but it's also found in some of the, wet material too. So,
in that case, if police officer came in and you had a bottle of apple juice that was medicated, they're
right.
Weigh the whole thing.
Right, or do you have to have labeling? That's another labeling. That's another thing too. I mean, it seems like we should have had another bill following or preluding this one really about proper labeling. I mean, is that? I mean, couldn't that not be a way of helping to clear up proper identification of everything for both law enforcement and anybody else?
In the bill here, it actually makes mention of labeling that if you have an ingestible or topical product, that you would have to have the amount of actual marijuana plant material
in there
used in its preparation,
or
whatever
that
was in there. It's marked on the packaging.
Yeah, I thought that part of it was
material.
That's what it's saying.
Yeah, I mean,
but putting BHO in it, or
that would be plant material.
True. I mean, just because it's not fiber doesn't mean it's not plant.
Well, that's what I was asking.
Right. So in a way, that would, in many respects, could clear up the whole misconception about the concentrates, couldn't it? And edible forms?
Potentially. I mean, it's saying here, usable marijuana means the completely dried leaves and flowers of marijuana, but does not include the seeds, stalks, non-dried leaves, or roots of the plant. And then it says, any cooking mixture or preparation used to prepare marijuana, infused, ingestible, or topical product is not usable marijuana if the ingestible or topical product has or will have the amount of actual marijuana plant material used in its preparation clearly marked on its packaging. Mm-hmm. So that's kind of confusing. It says any cooked mixture or preparation used that is infused or ingestible or topical is not usable if it has the amount of marijuana used on its preparation clearly marked on packaging. So if it's labeled, if it's labeled, then it's not usable.
Right.
Only what you label as THC content or whatever.
Right.
They're saying that whatever else.
Okay.
Well,
we're assuming that, but I'm just reading this from the law. The way it seems to me is that if it's labeled, then it's not usable. That doesn't make a whole lot of sense. You're trying to do the good faith thing here.
Right.
Put down, I've got a 5-pound tray of brownies, and inside of there is 3 grams of medication that I put inside of it.
Right.
Now it's all mixed up in the 5 pounds of brownies.
Right.
I think that's what it's saying. And
right.
The labeled part would be counted.
And so would not this in some ways help clear up the recent Court of Appeals decision on the concentrates?
See, I don't know if that would help clear it up or not, because this is a separate law.
Right.
And again, are we basing this on top of the current medical marijuana law and all its interpretations?
Yes.
Or is this completely separate?
That part of it is a little bit confusing, because I hear exactly what you're saying, and you're making sense with that.
And it does say on here, like one of the other sections of the law talks about a seedling, the plant. So again, we don't have a definition for what is a marijuana plant in the current marijuana law,
right?
Other than or is there? I don't think there's a definition in there for what a plant is.
No.
But even on the concentrates, like they're saying, if I have a gram of VHO that tests at 50% THC, that VHO is consumable. I can eat it.
Sure.
Could I just label my gram as 50% THC, and that's what they're going to count as half the weight?
So is it half a gram?
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like if it's labeled half a gram, but it's really a gram, but only a half gram of it is usable.
Or medicine, for that matter.
Right.
Right.
I think it does. I think it is too. I agree with you, Toby. I think that you have to have a better. If you're going to get that technical about it, you've got to get very technical about it and start to really narrow things down. Again, like for example, even if you have now they're kind of ruling it out by saying dried or non-dried.
Sure.
So let's say you have some medication that's curing, so it's not dried yet, and then we go and test it and find out, okay, this plant is 20% THC matter. So you've got an ounce of bud in a jar, but only 20% of that is actually medication.
Exactly.
Right.
So if we're going to go down to labeling,
Right.
I think then we really have to take a look at how exactly are you going to make us label what portion has to be counted towards the limit, and how is that deciphered?
Sure.
So
I-
20% plant, that turns your ounce into less than 6 grams.
Right.
And you know, and while
So
we're
now
on
you have an ounce sitting here of bud, but it's
labeled
only worth 6 grams.
5.8.
Right. You know, and you know, looking at it more and more broadly, I mean, like, is this going to help us or hurt us? Based on a couple of questions, such as, you know, like number one, that point I made earlier about, you know, we've got constant law enforcement and local municipalities, which are constantly repeating this rhetoric of, well, it's not a business now. It's not a business. It's not really a business. Yet, if this was to pass, then clearly it is, you know, identified as a business. So would that rhetoric that's being spread out now, would that come to an end if this bill passed? And if this bill passed, how critical is it going to be applied? I guess is the next question. Because honestly, if this bill passed and we simply just read into this bill how we originally interpreted or read into the Medical Marijuana Act of 2008. Just I'm talking about the layman, not some attorney, not our judicial branch or our legislative branch, but just the layman individual who looks at this and reads this and interprets this. Is that going to just be, look, this is an overview, this is how the process works, but are we going to have law enforcement taking a whole new charge toward this, going, okay, you know, and then taking this initiative now to seek out that I gotcha moment.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I don't want to see law enforcement using this as a means of fishing. You know what I mean? For that I gotcha moment. You know what I mean? Because you know,
it's going to depend on the community.
And that right. And I think it would.
Unfortunately.
I think it would certainly, given the fact that the bill has a set ability to localize, you know, regulation, local control over it. Obviously, that would depend. But you know, are the state police going to just, you know, look at this and make up their own interpretations, or go with like an attorney general's opinion next? Following this,
yeah, I think a lot of people would never have guessed that the current medical marijuana law would be in the place that it is today.
Yeah, it took so much.
You know, back in 2008. You know, when we passed it, it seemed like, okay, well, this is how it's going to be.
Right.
And today, 5 years back, looking on it, we're like, wow, I never would have imagined that.
Right.
This is how it's now.
That's yes. And you're
so
right,
I agree with you, Eric. It seems to me that, you know, we're reading this now and trying to apply like based on what we know.
Theorizing, we're like basing theories like, okay, how might this be interpreted, or how might not it be interpreted, or how may it be interpreted by us? But yet, when you get on a roadside pullover, it's going to be a whole different interpretation, and he's going to, okay, well, you know, the last. I agree with you. The last thing,
to me, it seems confusing as heck. I mean, if you're an officer and you pull somebody over, and they're like, "Well, I'm an agent."
Yeah, I know. I'm acting as an agent. Well, I'm not really an agent. I'm just acting as one today.
Right.
I'm not officially the agent. I'm just acting as one right now.
Yes.
and
I'm registered to that.
Yeah. The officer's gonna be like, "Well, you're a good actor." But
Here's your new bracelets.
You won.
Yeah, you won a pair of bracelets.
No, okay, and let me give you another example of that. I actually know of a medical marijuana patient who a couple months ago spent the weekend in jail because he couldn't get before a judge until the following Monday.
Mm-hmm.
But he spent the weekend in jail because he had he had 3 ounces instead of his 2.5.
Okay.
And so, I mean, let's just use that example as our platform of discussion real quick. I mean, when the officer pulls someone over and they have a medical marijuana card, it's valid, they have a valid driver's license to go with it, which is a picture ID connecting the driver's license and the card together so the officer has no doubts or questions as to the person's validity. But at the same time, the law says 2.5 usable. He's got a half ounce, which is nothing. I mean, we're not talking, 50 pounds more than what he's supposed to have. We're talking a half ounce more than what this individual is supposed to have. And so now he goes to jail because he's got a half ounce more than he's supposed to have. I mean,
Well,
two. I mean,
I
even
think
if
the
it was 2, I mean, 2.5. You're good, still good to go. If you got 2.5 and a roach, you're going to jail.
Well, I mean, from a patient caregiver perspective, I can see how that seems outlandish.
It is.
But I think to your general public, they would say, well, if, let's say, for instance, he just had a half ounce and didn't have a card, should he still go to jail? And, I mean, in some cases they do and some they don't.
Sure.
If you're a congressman,
Yeah,
you don't. But if you're a citizen, you might.
If you're a
Right.
you're a city councilman, you're still allowed to keep your job.
Well, and in certain areas across Michigan, we now have decriminalized measures for an ounce or less. So I mean, it would depend on where you're at, and I think it's going to depend on the situation. I mean, some officers may discard that and not really care about it. Others may, like in your situation, to give them the full force of the law, and put them in jail.
Just had him dump out the half ounce and let him go on his way.
Right.
But I mean, the way I look at it is that look, I mean, we do leave a fair amount of discretion to the officer at a roadside pullover in almost every given scenario.
Sure.
He knew the rules, though. You sign up. You know what you're allowed to have.
You know what?
You're slipping. You're slipping.
And I agree with that. But the exception is, what if this person maybe lives a considerable distance away from their patient? Maybe they just wanted to have that extra ounce because they didn't want to have to come back, or maybe I don't know.
But you have to look at the police officer's point of view, though. Everybody has an excuse or a reason.
Sure, I mean, that's you were doing 50 of the 55.
Right.
Well, I'm only going to bust you for the 5.
Right.
It just doesn't.
Okay. Right.
It doesn't bode well.
Okay. Right. And I'm not saying that maybe a simple ticket couldn't merit that adjustment or that type of scenario, but does that patient have to spend a weekend in jail without their meds? You know what I mean?
Like I said, I can understand that from the patient caregiver perspective. It seems outlandish.
It does.
That for just I'll being a half ounce over your limit. I mean, it's like sending the guy to jail for doing 5 over the speed limit. I hear you,
right.
But I also think that there's a large majority or portion. I don't want to say majority, but I think that there's a large part of the public out there that would say, well, he was over his limits, so spank him. You know what I mean? And
let me break
the rules. Let me
give you.
I stress out to make sure I'm within my stuff all the time.
We all do.
Everybody
we all do
that.
For example, my chief, of police, he mentioned. He said, look, I asked him what his opinions were on this kind of thing. He said, well, he said, if I pull someone over, if they've got their card, if it's valid, if they've got a valid driver's license, I'm probably gonna quit investigating at that moment any further, and I'm gonna let them be on their way. You know what I mean? And that's the kind of approach that I would like to see more officers take with the whole medical marijuana program. If you pull someone over, you have the presentation of the card, you automatically have the Section 4 presumption that the person's operating within the guidelines of the program. So why take it any further? You know what I mean? I mean, yeah, maybe the guy had more than his 2.5. Maybe he planned on smoking a half ounce of that, bud, or maybe he planned on putting one of those ounces in some medibles and he was going to smoke the rest of it. However he was going to use that, the patient, whatever. Can we just leave him alone at that point? Can we just say thank you, have a nice day, and be on your way?
I can totally understand what you want to agree with what you're saying.
Let me be more critical. What if I had a prescription for Vicodin, but instead of the bottle of Vicodin prescribed 500s, and then he looks at my bottle and he dumps it out and he goes, well, you got a 750 in there.
Yeah, they very well could bust you for that.
Oh, yes.
Okay,
and very well probably would.
Okay, I mean, how? But
even though it may have been the pharmacist's fault.
Right, exactly. I mean,
but what you're saying is basically he had his prescription for his 2.5, but the other wasn't. I mean, same thing as
right. I mean, and it also reads. I mean, because it's going to say on the bottle, what milligrams it is on the bottle. Okay, so it's going to say 500. But what if the officer just dumps it out to see if you got anything else in there? But he dumps it out and you got a 750 in your bottle of 500s. I mean, I'm just saying.
Of him finding you with somebody else's medicine bottle. You have yours, and then you have a half ounce of somebody else's that nobody can.
What if the prescription
bottle can claim this?
What if the prescription bottle you had before you were prescribed 750s? You were down to the last bottle, then you got a new bottle of 500s because you're trying to get weaned off them, and then you just dump the last 750 in that bottle, not thinking about it. I'm just saying,
you can find that in court and prove yourself.
I know, but I'm just saying. To what extent do we have to go in a court of law to split hairs over something that minute? You know what I mean? Are we going to drag through the court system and we're going to spend all this money, pull together a jury trial, get 6 people to quit going to their jobs?
According to what happened in a case last week, he wouldn't be getting a jury trial because he was over his limit. So he'd be going and facing criminal penalties for being over an ounce, which would be delivery intention. Or possession with intent to deliver and so on, and it'd be a felony charge. So I can totally understand what you're saying, and it does seem like it's a waste of law enforcement. But I could also say to the patients and caregivers out there, hey, you've got a limit to work with.
Right.
Stay within the limit. You know, if you don't want to have to go through that hassle, if you don't, because that's the truth of it right there. Is that that officer could have taken that half ounce and said, nah, forget it, drive away.
Right.
But he also had the ability to put him in jail for the weekend. And so that patient probably should have made the wiser choice and just gotten his 2.5 instead of getting 3.
Right.
And I'm sure he's probably sitting there thinking, well, this is ridiculous. Why am I going through this for just a half ounce? And the officer could be sitting on the other side of the table saying, yeah, this is ridiculous. Why didn't you just stay within your limit?
Yeah. Right.
Of course. Two sides of the coin there.
It is.
Yeah.
I just don't like to see argument over splitting hairs. Wow. You know what I mean? Like, we're talking about,
Well, we have split the hairs today. We've split the feathers.
Oh, man.
We are no longer fledglings. We've flown on.
We're about to fly out of here. Oh, man.
Well, that's a controversy that we have for you this week. We want to thank you guys for joining us here at FlintTalkRadio.com. John, thanks for being in the studio with us. Definitely appreciate it. Eric, thank you for coming out to the show today.
Always pleasure.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Guys, if you can make it to the Capitol tomorrow, I know that there will be a public hearing and time for public comment. You guys are welcome to join. Anyone can be there. Show up. Let your voice be heard if you can. And, this definitely seems to be a confusing bill, so maybe they could get some of this clarified at the House hearing tomorrow. So, what time does it start tomorrow?
I believe it's 8:30.
All right, so bright and early in the morning, down at the Anderson building. Love the name there, Mr. Anderson. He will be there. But again, thanks for joining us this week on the Genesee County Compassion Club show. Hope to see you here next week.